All right, good morning, everyone. We are almost at midday. I just wanted to say hello and thank you very much to those of you who've turned up nice and early, actually, for today's first session in our webinar series. We will get started sort of roundabout on the hour because we have a bit of content to get through, but I did just want to ask a small favor of those of you who are on the call already. There's a little chat box where you can put in a question in the corner of your screen as part of your GoToWebinar control panel. If within that, you could just confirm that you can hear me and that you can also see my screen, which should be a nice purple presentation slide. That will be fantastic so that when we get started, I know that everyone can hear what I'm saying and see what I'm going through. That would be really helpful. All right, Hannah, I can hear and see your screen. Awesome, thank you so much. Got a couple more through now. Perfect. All right. Glad to know that. Thank you very much. So look, I'm just going to pop myself back on mute for just a couple of minutes and we'll get going just on the hour, maybe a minute past, just to let some more people filter through. All right, speak to you soon. All right, hello again, everyone. We will get started now that we are on the hour. As I said, we have quite a bit of content to get through today. So again, hello and thanks for joining today's Opru EdTech webinar. So today we're going to explore a subsection of the top 35 operational processes that schools and MATs like yours have digitized in Opru during 2021 and in preparation for this new academic year. So this session will look at the key parent workflows which Opru is helping UK schools to automate. We'll then demonstrate some of these core parent-facing workflows for you live so that you can see how to automate similar resource-intensive operational processes at your own school or MAT. And time permitting, we'll finish up with a short Q&A at the end of the session. So as I said, this session is the first in our series on the top 35 operational workflows to automate. The other sessions are on your screen right now, and we'd love to see you at the other sessions. So we think they'll be of interest as well. And they're running across Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week and next week, and all taking place at 12 p.m. to make it nice and simple. So today is that parent workflows webinar, and then tomorrow we're doing one all about staff workflows, so automating your staff forms, processes, approvals, and policy management. Thursday this week we're doing an eForms masterclass, so basically any type of form or request that you might want to digitize for any purpose, we're going to show you how that is possible. Then next week we're going to have a session dedicated to health workflows, so sort of managing your duty of care, things like COVID-safe processes, incidents and injury reporting. On Wednesday the 6th, we'll have a session dedicated to managing paperless school trips. And then finally, to wrap it up, Thursday the 7th, we'll have a bit of a combined session that covers student and public-facing workflows as well. So I guess some audiences there outside that typical parent or staff target there. So we hope you'll have time to come along to those as well. So my name is Lachlan James. I'm Operu's Head of Marketing. I'm joined by our UK Sales Director, Tom Owen, who will walk you through today's demonstrations. But before we get started properly, just a little bit of housekeeping. Now, as attendees, you are all set to mute to help with audio quality. However, if you do have questions during the webinar, there is a question box in the corner of your screen. So please enter questions into that box and we'll answer questions at the end of the presentation, and we'll follow up afterwards if we do run short on time. Also, we are recording this session, so everyone who's registered will be sent a link to the recording within the next week. Additionally, all registrants will receive a free copy of Operu's Best Practice Guide, Top 35 Operations UK Schools Should Automate in 2021. And to develop this resource, we analysed the 200 plus manual tasks and processes we're helping schools automate this calendar year and compiled a summary of the most frequently used and automation worthy. And that forms the basis of this webinar series as well. So before we really get into it, I know there's a real mix of people on this call, from some seasoned Operu users to schools and some other organizations, just starting their process automation journey. And some people who, may have never heard of us and what we do. So whatever the case, it's definitely worth spending a couple of quick minutes just explaining who we are, what we do, and just to provide some context to today's session and outline exactly why I guess we've got the authority to speak on this topic. So quickly, Operu is a school operations platform used to automate processes and digitally manage workflows. Essentially, we're helping hundreds of schools throughout the UK, thousands around the world, to eliminate slow, expensive, and repetitive paper-based tasks. And Operu enables schools to save time and resources by automating these operational tasks, therefore increasing staff productivity, parental engagement, and student participation. And basically, our goal is to empower schools and multi-academy trusts to use every minute and every pound possible on student education rather than wasting resources on operational inefficiencies. So this is a little bit of a bird's eye view of Operu in action, and Operu provides, I guess, the canvas upon which you can automate, well, any school process really. So you start with a pre-built template or create your own custom form, request, or piece of communication. You then add any approval workflow steps necessary, enabling certain people to authorize content before its distribution. You then automatically distribute that content to any selected audience, be they parents, staff, or students, based on any data attributes known about specified recipients within the Operu platform. And as a completely cloud-based and mobile-ready solution, you receive responses within minutes from any device or operating system. You can then trigger follow-up actions based on responses received, securely collect any data you need. So that might be consents, payments, medical information, or anything else you need. Automated reminders do that chasing for you until missing information is submitted, so it really takes away the manualness of that. And finally, you can track, analyze, and act on responses received with filters, charts, and dashboards. So essentially, Operu is a school operations and productivity platform that digitizes and streamlines sort of all your slow, repetitive, paper-based, or just disconnected processes in one place. And so, these are some really common use cases there. So, things like, multi-language school forms and consents for parents and students, to staff forms and approval workflows, parent communications, payments and ordering, school trip management, medical data collection and verification, and the list does go on. So I guess brings back to the topic of today's presentation. Recently we did sit down and compile that list of the top 35 processes schools have automated with us over the last calendar year. And we did do this by analysing, as I said, the 200 plus operational workflows we've helped schools to streamline in 2021. And we picked out the most common parent, staff, and public facing processes. And so here's what this list looks like at a glance. So I guess, things from pre-admissions and induction to student medical cards, virtual parent-teacher conference management, request management, event registration and ticketing, consent forms, of course, daily announcements, and the list goes on. And today we're going to focus on digitizing and automating those common parent-facing processes and tasks. So when it comes to parent workflows, we know, there are many different ways to communicate with parents, and I'm sure you all will have some way of emailing and texting your parent communities. But we want to talk about, how you can really use smart communication. So what do you do when you get a response? Because for most schools, dealing with the responses and follow-up actions really is a manual task still, and you have to view responses and choose the actions that you take next. And Opera really removes these manual actions, making it much easier and to use your data, and you can use it in a much smarter way, which of course then also reduces the time you spend on these types of operational tasks. So let's get into the meat of today's presentation as we explore and reveal the top parent-facing processes we've worked with UK schools and MATs to automate over the last 12 months. So number one, start of year pre-admissions and inductions are two of the most resource-intensive recurring processes that basically any K-12 education institutions undertake. With the number of moving parts, there's a lot of inherently inefficient elements. As well as the numerous moving parts, the sheer number of documents involved really magnifies those inefficiencies. So here's a list of just some of the basic documents, forms, consents, workflows your school needs to complete, during the application and induction phases of pre-admissions. And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with a lot of these, from, emergency contact information, SEN requirements, pupil premium applications, ICT usage agreements, student, consents and contracts, and the list just goes on, and it really can get quite overwhelming. In fact, traditional resource-intensive pre-admissions takes, hours to complete, sheet after sheet of paper, and, really a huge team of administrators, which all cost time and money. However, basic analysis of independent statistics highlights just why, in a digitally driven world, this inefficient process really needs to move with the times. It's, estimates indicate that, government schools across the UK spend, £50 million on the administrative costs associated with processing just the paper-based elements of pre-admissions applications. That's really quite staggering. And the average secondary school spends around £7,200 on these same paper-based administrative costs year after year. Then there's the time and expense of chasing parents, manual data entry, student induction that, follows that initial pre-admissions phase. So, the frightening facts we do know really are merely the tip of a very large, very inefficient iceberg. So that's why we're working with schools across the UK to digitize and automate pre-admissions processes, from data wrangling and communicating with prospective families to collecting forms and onboarding those new students. That's why it's a key workflow that we have seen. So, for example, Allerton High School in Leeds embarked upon a journey to digitally transform the way it manages pre-admissions, streamlining the entire process, automatically inducting new students once admitted, and instantly syncing data back into its management information system, SIMS. Overall, the team at Allerton, were able to deliver a far superior experience for everyone involved in pre-admissions at the school by applying process automation and digital workflow technologies. They saved hundreds of hours by eliminating the need to distribute physical admissions packets to feeder schools, conduct face-to-face meetings, make hundreds of photocopies, or manually enter data captured back into their MIS, and the list goes on. And school data manager Gary Lockery, summarized the benefits, saying that they saved hundreds of hours because they no longer had to chase forms and missing information, and that sending follow-up communications and actions is now all systemized. So that's all automated based on the data that is returned. And in Gary's own words, he says, we had all pre-admissions forms completed and returned in days, with 2 people overseeing the process, rather than an entire team of people manually chasing down forms for weeks. To call the change to a pre-admissions process transformative would not be an overstatement. And speaking of Gary's words, here's a really great summation as well from Gary about that process. And he says, we saved hundreds of hours, thousands of pounds, and a lot of heartache. I'm so happy and amazed with our pre-admissions process now. We have completely removed all paper from the new starters parents experience. We send out all forms digitally. Parents love it, responding quickly and accurately from any device or in any language. They also provide us with student medical data, which flows straight back into SIMS. Admin staff love it too. Opera saves us loads of time, as the system triggers next steps in the workflow, subsequent communications, and does the chasing for us. So some really big wins there on a really big task there in pre-admissions. So number 2, excursions and extracurricular activity management. So organising and supervising safe and successful school trips is a lot of work at the best of times, let alone COVID times and now, moving into a new school year, have to think really carefully about how these programs are managed and how you make that safe and efficient. And with Opera, you can take all your processes online and automate the entire trip management lifecycle, from internal sign-offs, distributing and collecting permission forms, and managing medical records and payments, to identifying and safeguarding, vulnerable cohorts, responding to emergencies and recording incidents, communicating with parents, and securing confidential student data once an activity has finished. And another example here, Feltham College took its school trip management process from a resource-intensive, as they describe, paperwork calamity, to a seamless digital experience, whilst giving staff their time back, improving parental engagement, student participation, and data security, as well as enhancing the school's ability to effectively meet its duty of care obligations 24/7. And the results they've achieved really do speak for themselves. They can now safely manage over 100 trips per year with scarce human intervention. They no longer need to chase parents for missing information at all, and they've reduced the number of paper consent forms for trips that they need to wrangle each and every year from over 5,000 to 0. So some fantastic results there from Feltham College. All right. Our third parent-facing workflow, digitally collecting consensus signatures. So schools that are embracing eForms, to digitally distribute, collect, analyze, and act on permission requests experience much higher response rates without having to manually chase or collate answers. And Opera really is simple for parents to access, so they can get what they need to complete on any device, anywhere, and in any language. And using tools like trigger actions and smart groups, and Tom will go through some of that later, schools can significantly reduce manual workload and cost, as well as better use their data. You don't know what answers parents will give you, so you might send them everything just in case, or have to input that data. So using technology to manage who gets what information and when is hugely beneficial. And schools using Opera also stop having to chase information, like I mentioned before. So, every school, I guess, has a percentage of parents who tend not to respond to normal requests, which means chasing them and manually calling or emailing. And removing this, for the schools that we work with, really is of huge value. So I guess even if you're a school that's using some kind of digital system or solution for doing this, you need to kind of ask yourself, are you still having to chase information from parents? And if so, the answer is you can apply process automation to really eliminate the manual effort involved there. All right, number 4, student medical data. So fulfilling your duty of care obligations is paramount to ensure the the safe day-to-day functioning of your school. But that's a big part of the reason that digitally collecting and verifying the latest health and medical information from students, from medical conditions and dietary information to emergency contacts and action plans for identified illnesses like asthma or anaphylaxis, is the most widely used parent-facing workflow within the Opera platform. And whilst this could have been a section in itself, we're also including the ability to set up web-based COVID-safe processes within this use case too. So this includes a range of things, which we'll cover in a bit more detail in our health workflows webinar next week, then including things like, lateral flow testing management, loan device registration and tracking when people are working remotely, absenteeism reporting and tracking, daily health check-ins, date-stamped building passes, so you can control, I guess, the people coming into your buildings and have a high degree of certainty that they are healthy and non-symptomatic, case tracking and reporting, testing consents, and bubble scheduling as well. So a lot there, but we'll cover some of that in detail in next week's health webinar. But student medical data, an enormous parent-facing workflow that we help a lot of schools to digitize. All right, next. Before and after school programs really provide an integral service for busy working parents, and this is a use case we've seen crop up more and more over the last 2 years. And with Opera, you can automate the registration process, dynamically update the group of participating students, instantly distribute communications to the specified specific families involved, and give third-party providers access to relevant student profiles, including medical, dietary, and emergency contact information as well. School extracurricular activities, so from tutoring programs to sports competitions and performing arts, really do require strong parental engagement and student participation to be sustainable and successful. But awkward, time-consuming and manual sign-up processes often get in the way, and that's why schools across the UK are, really starting to streamline the associated registration, payments, consent, and medical data verification processes in integrated digital workflows with Operoo to really streamline that entire the management of that entire piece. And this is what Sarah Armand from Bishopsgate School had to say about using Operoo to automate its extracurricular activities and after-school club processes. And she says, process automation transformed the management of extracurricular activities, particularly our after-school club. Parents love how easy it is to make bookings and give consent through digital forms, while we have internal visibility into the number of signups per day, age group, and activity type. The live updates of data save us a monumental amount of time. So some really great work there by Sarah and her team. Next, now, coordinating parent-teacher interviews is a bit of a logistical nightmare, even when we're not grappling with a pandemic. And, you can actually use Operoo to digitally deliver conference booking forms straight to parents' smartphones, track scheduled appointments in real time, and automatically notify teachers as soon as an appointment is logged. And so, if you're an Operoo school on today's call, I highly recommend you give this workflow a go if you haven't already. Next is EAL parent survey distribution and the communication of associated support services. And, in a globalized world, our school communities are becoming increasingly multicultural. And with Operoo, you can give your foreign language families the added support they deserve. And, schools are using our platform to digitally deliver EAL parent surveys and supporting information straight to parents' mobile phones. And critically, this is all delivered in the recipient's language of choice. And just to drill down on this a bit more, aside from this specific workflow example, your parent community has become more ethnically diverse just generally, and this trend is only accelerating. So the ability to automatically enable parents to access communications in their language of choice is critical to ensuring understanding and responsiveness of any parent-facing processes, communication tactic, or form type. And just to underscore this, according to the latest data from statistics.gov.uk, 19.3% of pupils in UK schools have a first language other than English. And this percentage rises again in the context of primary schools. So across the UK, around 21% of primary school students learn English as an additional language or dialect. So something to really keep in mind whenever you're sending communications home. All right, number 9. Individual education or individual learning plans. So these are essential to help map and monitor a student's unique learning needs. However, completing the associated documentation and getting the IEP approved can be slow and cumbersome at times. And with Operoo, you can distribute all IEP documents to parents and staff digitally, enabling automated approval workflows to ensure each person can quickly complete and sign off on the plan. Now, this next workflow could have been broken down again into individual use cases, but we're covering parent-facing ordering and payments here as an overall workflow category just for the sake of time. And the ability to embed payment options in digital forms and processes is an enormous time saver for many of the schools we work with, for things like school fees, uniform purchases, extracurricular activities, supplies, and much more. All right, next, school and department letters. So over the last 18 months, we've seen a huge hike in demand here, which really is, it's hardly surprising with everyone, off doing remote learning. And, by consent forms, schools using Operoo to deliver memos, letters, and announcements straight to parents' smartphones have had significant success, really bridging that school-family communications divide. Now, having a robust mechanism for identifying and managing Senko processes is really critical to ensure you're able to efficiently and effectively enable your staff to provide students and families with the support services they require. Now, to meet this need, Leeds Allerton High School incorporated an automated workflow within its Start of Year student induction workflow. So once the specific needs or interests of incoming students at that school are established, they're then automatically placed into appropriate digital groups, and additional supplementary information is automatically requested using Operoo trigger actions. And Tom will explain what they are a little bit later on. So regarding this workflow, school data manager, Gary Lockery, who we've mentioned before, he said, when pre-admitted families fill out our disability questionnaire and indicate that their child requires extra support, we use trigger actions to instantly send an email notifying our SENCO. That communication pinpoints the specific child, family, and recommends follow-up actions. In this case, the automated email suggests the SENCO should set up a meeting to determine how the school can best assist the incoming student. All right, lucky number 13, messaging and communications. So we know that schools spend an enormous amount of time and effort communicating with their, their community, and particularly in order to keep families informed and engaged. And in an increasingly digital world, combined with the implications of the current pandemic, pressure to ensure communications are rapidly received has really never been greater. And as a result, we've seen a substantial increase in demand to centralize and automate school communications in order to efficiently and effectively meet and manage that rising demand. So from sending carefully segmented emails, text messaging and push notifications, to things like distributing targeted announcements and news feeds to defined recipient groups in any language and via any device. And in the age of constant accessibility and instant everything, you need to deliver communications to parents on a silver platter. So you need to push information to parents. So that this might include things like emails, SMS, or in-application notifications. It's fine to complement these methods with pull tactics, such as displaying information on your school website or parent portal, but you need to meet people where they live. And today, that also means you need to be mobile ready. In 2021, it's not enough to be online and in the cloud. You also need to ensure the digital communications tactics and processes that you set up are available on any device or operating system. And just to underscore this, today over 92% of the UK's total population has a smartphone. That percentage nears, total saturation amongst our adult population. And it's adults with school-age children that actually spend the most amount of time on their phones too. So as we can see from this chart, so your parents really are the perfect demographic for mobile-based communications. But with operating system usage evenly split across the UK between iOS and Android, you want to ensure that you're enabling a consistent user experience across any mobile platform or device as well. I think that's quite critical. And just lastly, before I hand over to Tom to take you through the live demonstration component of today's session, part of this mobile push saw the recent release of a new function within the Operoo platform called Operoo News. And so Operoo News basically delivers a digital news feed that distributes tailored updates to specific groups in real time, from event notifications, news items, reminders, and announcements. It's really a rolling communication feed that's ideal for complementing or even replacing your existing school newsletter, and distributing highly segmented, always relevant news to different sections of your school community. And Tom will sort of show you through that a little bit now as part of his demonstration. So Tom, with that said, mate, I might hand over to you.
Fantastic, thanks Lachlan, and hello everybody. Thanks for your time this afternoon. I'm just going to make myself the presenter. Lachlan's already done it for me. There we go. So let's make sure we can see my screen. Terrific. As Lachlan said, at this point, I'm going to hop over. I'm going to show you a live demo so you can see what's possible in Operoo. I'm going to be spending most of my time today in the desktop browser version of Operoo, purely because it's easier to see over a webinar. But I thought I'd pull up our mobile, because we've been talking about mobile coming into this, pull up my mobile on screen initially to show you that Operoo is available on any device, 24/7, and with 24/7 support for you and your parents. So it doesn't matter if a parent is using their phone, their tablet, their laptop, their desktop, or all four, they have access to the same interface and the same information. And to answer, I've been monitoring your questions as they come in, and a question came through about what happens if a parent doesn't sign up to the Operoo app. What sits behind Operoo is, or what Operoo is designed to be, is very flexible. So if I am a parent who wants access through the app and I want to get push notifications, absolutely fine, I can get it through that method. If what I actually need is emails, I want to access this on my desktop at work, or I want to switch between these devices, I absolutely can. I've always got access to the same interface and the same information, no matter how I access the content. So everything we're going to see in desktop will be exactly the same in mobile, but let's make it a bit easier for everybody to see. Let's remove that and pull up my desktop version of exactly the same information. It's worth saying at the outset that contacts in your MIS, whatever your MIS is, are automatically synced to Operoo, and this happens dynamically. So any new students, any new parents will automatically come into the system. Then as a parent, I'm sent a unique email, or if we don't have an email address, I'm sent a text message, and that email or text message includes a username and a password. I click on a link, go through to the system, I change my password, and I'm into the Operoo system. So this is a completely secure environment, and this is important because if you're using products like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, we see for a lot of form management, or if you're just sending things via email for people to fill in, you need to consider how you know the person completing, reading, replying to this information is correct, and the potential impact of this on your GDPR compliance. So we're in the browser version, and I want to look today at some of the different parental engagement tools and some of the examples that Lachlan outlined earlier in this webinar. Operoo is used as a platform for parent engagement throughout a student's time into school, and that process starts before students are admitted into school. So at the moment, we're on Daniel's parents login. Daniel is a student who is due to be joining our school next year. Now, depending on your school, this could be a pre-admitted student, which the local authority has made you aware of, or somebody who's going through an application process. If you're an independent school, if you're a sixth form college, you might be going through a particular application process. The view I'm in is Operoo Central. From here, as a parent, I can securely access any forms or information that a school wants to send me. The first section I have at the top here is news. As a reminder, schools using Operoo can use a variety of ways of communicating with their parents, including email, push notification, text notifications, but this news feed is where schools can send targeted messages to a whole school or a particular group or a small subset of a group. And this is the most convenient way to share things like news, announcements, reminders, newsletters, and much, much more. If I go into our news item, we can see that this is a welcome letter to the school. As I said, this is a pre-admitted student, along with an attachment, which is a link to some diary dates with some relevant content for me as a new parent. Once I've read that, that's no longer there for me to view, but it's always available to me up here in news. So I always get these notifications of other news items. We'll have a look at a few other ones later on. As a pre-admitted parent, I've got a set of forms which I need to complete. So I've got a pupil premium application form, I've got a homeschool agreement, I've got a big admissions form with a lot of data which I need to collect. But all of these forms and any form or process within the Operoo system can be completely customized down to your specific requirements. You know, if you're not asking for a free school meal application, but you've got a bursary process, you put your own bursary process through the system. And it was mentioned earlier on using the example of Allerton, but this admissions process is one which is used by a huge amount of our schools and the schools using Operoo. If I jump out to a particular form to show you, so this is an admissions form for our current school year. I've got it open in another tab here. This particular form is designed to capture all the core information schools need to complete in this particular example in SIMS, including things like parent guardian contacts, religion, ethnicity, language, consents. And with this particular example, I'm going to scroll down because there's a lot of data in here. Lots of data fields to complete. In this particular example, this form is designed to automatically write that information back into SIMS. Now, we're not going to be spending a great amount of detail and time on this one today. We do have additional webinars available on this specific subject, but I would say don't worry if you don't use SIMS as your MIS. We do have solutions for schools no matter what your MIS, or if you don't have an MIS at all. Back in our main account here, one of the things which Lachlan mentioned a lot when he was talking through is the ability to engage parents with English as an additional language. So let's look at this. And we know from our experience of speaking to schools about their parental engagement, there are many problems in supporting parents with English as an additional language. So when that parent first logs into the Operoo system, they are asked at that stage, what's your preferred language? But I can also come and change that now by clicking on our globe icon up here, and we've got a whole range of different languages which I can change to. And I'm going to choose Arabic today and save. Now, if I head into my Pupil Premium free school meal application, we can see that all of my questions have changed into Arabic. So it's doing that translation for your parents, making it really clear for them what you need them to complete and when you need them to complete it. And we can try this with different languages. Actually, let's reset to English first. And let's go to Polish and save. And then if I head into my homeschool agreement, we can see that the block of text within my homeschool agreement is now in Polish. This is something which I need to read. I've then got an item I need to download, and I need to accept and sign and submit my response. Make it as easy as possible for parents with English as an additional language to access the questions you're asking them, and means that you don't have to worry about any of that translation, deciding which parents have access to what. Parent decides they use defined language, and then they can access this detail. And this is true of all communications. If we're sending news or text messages or emails to that parent, we can decide whether that goes in that user-defined language, make it really easy for them to understand anything you want them any communication from school, make it really engaging for those parents. Okay, let's reset back to English. We've always got that option in there. And talk about something else. With all of these forms, if you as a school don't get a response, the parent is sent reminders at a frequency you define. So, for example, my Pupil Premium form, which is in there, every 2 days, I'm getting an email saying that I need to complete that Pupil Premium form. Now, I'm also signed up for push notifications, so I'm getting both streams telling me you've still got this form to complete. Lachlan mentioned it earlier. There's always a percentage of parents who don't want to respond straight away. But I can speak from personal experience of Operoo at my children's school that percentage of parents are now the fastest ones to respond because they don't want to have those reminder emails, those chasers. And it means the admin team in school don't have to keep making phone calls. They know they've received this, then it's doing the automatic following up for them. The other thing you'll see that we've got in here as Daniel as a soon to be admitted student is a student record. But let's jump over to an enrolled student and show the student record within that setup. So I'm just going to switch accounts from Daniel's parent to Amy's parent. Okay, Amy's a student already enrolled in my school. Once again, I'm in Operoo Central, once again available on any device. And this time I'm going to start with the student record. Let's come and view the student record. The student record is designed to show the parent the information that you currently hold in your systems for their child. So it's a place where parents can keep information up to date and confirm the information is still correct. Say, for example, if their child is going on a trip, they can confirm that the emergency contact information is still correct. If we go down our student profile, we can see we've got things like personal, address, emergency contact information. We've got lots of controls in the system for split families. You can see here as dad, I can't see mum's details. And then as we scroll down, we've got things like dietary requirements, medical conditions, and safety alerts. Now, let's say as the parent, I can see that Amy has asthma, but I need to let the school know about a new medical condition. So to do this, I can come in and click edit. These are the most common conditions we see in our schools, but there's a whole range of conditions which you might require. But let's say Amy has a peanut allergy. So I want to let the school know about this. I'm going to click allergy, allergies anaphylactic, and click save. And then that is then going to ask me a series of other questions based on that specific condition. What's our risk level? Let's say it's life-threatening. And Amy has a severe peanut allergy. Is an EpiPen provided for this condition? If it is, what's the expiry date for that EpiPen? And let's set that at the end of September next year. Now, dates are really important in the Opera system because we can use dates to set reminders. In this particular setup, with this EpiPen expiry date, in the lead up to that date expiring, I'm going to start getting reminders as the parent that that EpiPen is due to expire and be asked to come in and update the details. You also might want to have that information for you in school. So you might want to use something like our smart groups or reporting to be able to see which EpiPens do we hold, when is their expiry date? And this can be true of any date within the system. I'm also asked whether there is an action plan associated with this. So I can come in and add an attachment. Let's add in, if I go to my desktop, I've normally got an attachment in there. There we go, there's an allergy plan. And I can add that in there. I can also add in multiple attachments should I need this. Now, if I was on my mobile, I could just take a photo of an existing allergy plan and put that in there. And again, I'm asked for an expiry date. Let's set this again at next year, and then there'll be reminders set up for that as well. I'm going to tick to say these are my approved instructions, and I will save. Now, if we head down to the bottom, this has created a safety alert. And this can trigger different actions depending on your school's requirements. Lachlan mentioned triggers earlier on. Triggers are what actions do you want to take based on specific data which you receive. So in this particular example, based on this being received, what do we want to happen? In my school, that could be that the school nurse is informed that there's a new condition. Because it's to do with an allergy, it could be that the catering team have been given that information, or the catering team are made aware of when that child will have lunch, peanut allergies, things like that. And because this particular demo account is set up with to be integrated with Sims, this particular data is going to be written back into Sims to keep that MIS up to date. If I head back to Opera Central, we'll also see that I've got a further requirement for the parent, which you can see here, my school's anaphylactic protocols. This is another example of a trigger. Based on the child having a particular medical condition, what do we want them to complete? It's not sending out asthma protocols to every single parent just in case. It is based on the specific condition you've told us your child has, what do we want to do? Or based on a specific answer to a question, what do we want to happen with that child? Okay, so those are examples of triggers. Let's have a look at all of the other things which you might use for your parent engagement, which I've got set up in here. We're going to start with our news items. If I come in here, I've got slightly different news item as an enrolled parent. I've got a notification that it's Red Nose Day this Friday, so I need to remember to bring in £1. And with news, schools can auto archive these articles. So on Friday, once everyone's in school, as a parent, I no longer see this, it's removed from my view. Something like newsletters, you might want newsletters to sit in news for a year and then be removed. This auto archiving means that you keep this nice and clean for your parents. Now, if I head back to Opera Central, let's show you a different example of a form. I've got a few different forms in here. I've got a trip, I've got a parent-teacher meeting, I've now got my anaphylactic protocols, but I'm going to come into our after-school club. Now, our after school club, this is a form which I've built for this specific webinar, but like all forms, you can completely customize the data that's in here, the questions you ask, all of this other information can be completely customized. In this specific example, I've got a date at the top when I need to respond by. I've got an overview of our after school clubs. As a parent, I can come in and add the after school clubs to a specific calendar. Then we've got a choice option here for which clubs I would like to attend. I've got different clubs available to me, and this particular question type means that we can limit space on different clubs. So I can see that cooking club is unavailable to me, but I've got the waiting list should I want to sign up for cooking club. But I'm going to choose our code club. That's the only one I want to sign up for. And we've got a secondary option, which is whether we want a hot meal after that particular club. I'm going to say no. My child's going to be collected at 5, which means there's no cost associated with this. Now I've got another question. Built in here. Does my child have any special requirements not listed on their profile? Now you see a slight difference with some of these questions. This question has a red star next to it, means it's required. This question doesn't have a red star next to it. So it means if I don't have anything, I don't need to fill it in, but I'm going to put it in, not applicable in there. Then I've got a very specifically worded acceptance, which I will accept, and I'm going to sign, and I'm going to submit that response. Again, we're back in Operoo Central, and I've got a further form based on my selections. In this particular example, it's a payment for an after-school club for next week based on the criteria I've set. When we go into the administrative side of the system, we're also going to see that I've been put into a specific group based on those selections, and I'll show you that when we go to the administration side of the system. We've got some additional forms in here which I need to complete, and I'm being sent reminders all the time that I need to complete these forms. But for time today, we're not going to go into all of these. But it's worth saying at this point, Operoo is designed to have a series of form types and question types to collect any data or manage any process. One final area I want to look at from a parent-facing side is our on-demand forms. Everything we've spoken about today up to this point is data pushed out to the parent. We need you to complete this. Here's information for you. We need to make you aware of this. It's all pushed out to the parent. But there are many processes in school which will need to be available to parents at any point. For that, we use, up in this top right-hand corner, our form library. You'll see various examples used by schools in here. It's sometimes used by schools for things like their PCR test results, to request handbooks, links to policies, use a bit of a hub of information, or it's used for things like student reporting, illnesses, injury, logging concerns, those kind of things. If I go into our, let's say as this parent, I want some term time leave for my child. So I can come in and start this form at any time. I've got a series of questions which I need to complete, when they're absent from, until, how many days they're going to be absent, reason. You could add any questions you like in here. You can customize this to include doctor's notes or any other information which you need set up in here. Upload different information, whether it's part day, full day, whatever you need to collect. But importantly, when we get to the bottom of this, we've got a workflow sitting behind this particular form. And these workflows can sit behind any of these kind of on-demand forms, whether it's for the parent side or for the staff side. If you're signed up for our staff webinar tomorrow, we'll be going much more in depth into these workflows and how this can process and move things through your school. In this particular example, we'll see that once this form is submitted by a parent, first of all, it goes to our admin team to review. And potentially you could have some further admin questions in here, how much leave they've already taken this year, that kind of thing. Then once that's completed by the admin team, it's going to go through to our head teacher for final approval. At each stage, whoever the person or people are within that particular group, admin team or head, are going to be notified that they've got something to complete and reminded if they don't respond in the same way the parents are. As the parent completing the form, I'm also sent details of whether this has been approved or rejected. And in this particular form, if it is approved, I've got a trigger set up off the back of this that my child's class teacher gets notified that they won't be in school. For your processes, you can customize every element of this, what's in the form, who approves what and when, and what the follow-up actions are. Now, this is the parent-facing side of Operoo. I want to show you some other views in the Operoo system, and for that, I'm going to flip over to the administrative side of the Operoo system. As an administrator, this is what I see within the Operoo system, and given where we are in terms of time today, we're not going to go into great detail with this and look around all of these different elements. if you do want to see this side in more depth and explore things like the workflows and the triggers in far more detail, this Thursday, the webinar we're running this Thursday is going to go into great detail about specifically building out a workflow using all of these different tools. Or there'll be details at the end of the webinar about how you can set up an individual demo for your school or trust, set up an individual demo so I can walk through all of these details with you. But as I said, we're in the administrative side of the system. This is the student section of the administrative side. Up in this top left-hand corner, I'm on our student view, but I can toggle down to our staff view. This is where we create our staff forms, staff processes, things like that. That's what we're going to look at in tomorrow's webinar. Then we get to our form library. This is the place where all of your data is collected, and you can analyze this information in depth. You can go into any form, decide which fields you want to see, what information you want to see, and analyze accordingly. Lots more controls in here. Underneath the form library, again, down this left-hand side, we have our event documents. There we go. Event documents is where we pull together all of the data for a specific event, whether that's a trip, an after-school club, or anything like that. And if we want to share that data with a specific member of staff, or as Lachlan mentioned earlier, a sports coach who comes in to run an after-school activity, we can share specific data with that individual for a set period of time. Underneath our event documents, we have our news articles, our news feed. This is where we can come in and publish our articles, decide when they're set up for. And underneath that, we have our message center. This is where we can come in, create new messages for parents, for students, for staff, send those messages and follow up on all of that information. If I head back to our student view, there's a couple of other things which I do just quickly want to show in terms of analyzing data, which can be really important for your parental engagement. If I go into an individual student, let's say Daniel, I've got a few options in here, like I can send Daniel's parents individual messages, things like that. But from a practical point of view, there's a couple of really important things within this setup. One is all eForm responses. All eForm responses is the equivalent of a digital filing cabinet for each student. It contains all the forms parents complete, along with any staff completed forms. We've got some examples which we'll show in the medical webinar. We do things like injury logs, behaviour reports. All of this is searchable and exportable for an individual child, making it easy to find the data you need for each student. We also have, if I head back to our view here, let's go back to Daniel. We also have our audit trail. Our audit trail is where you can see all the correspondence along with clicks and statuses for every piece of communication. So you can see exactly who's seen what and when, as well as staff who've logged in and accessed a profile, who you've given access to, notes and history associated with that individual student, and sign-ins from their parents who've signed in and accessed data within the system. All of this completely controllable by you, so you can see all of this information in one place. And if I head back to our student view again, we talked about triggers and things like that earlier on. An example of a trigger in here, we filled out a form earlier on, and if I head into our groups down here, I've got a preschool and after school club, and I filled it in for Monday with a 5 p.m. pickup. We can see that Amy's in that particular setup. So based on the information which was filled in, Amy's then gone into that particular group. And then we can share that group with individuals should we need to. So if I head over to a staff view, let's go into a staff login rather than administrative login, I can see I'm in charge of the 5 p.m. pickup group, and I've got access to Amy's information in there, so I can see exactly who's going to be part of that specific group. If I head back to our administrative view, how are we for time? We've got 9 minutes. I know that you've had some questions coming through, and I do want to get to those. I'm just going to show you one thing really quickly. let's say we wanted to create something within Operoo. Couple of different quick things we can create. Let's say we want to send a message to parents. We want to send a new parent message. And this is true of anything we're setting up within the system. We talked about distributing this information to specific groups. Because you've got a lot of data in Operoo, it means you can be really specific with who you're sending information to. I want to send a message to that group we just looked at. So our Monday 5 p.m. pickup group, I'm going to choose next. Based on whoever is in that group, let's say I want to send a push notification, and I'm going to say, we've had an issue during this particular setup. I want to send a message via push notification to say, the main school entrance is currently undergoing maintenance. Please collect your child from gate 2. We can translate it to a user's preferred language. We've also got various other settings in here for these different things, and I can send that push notification. So instantly, it's that quick and easy to send to really specific groups to see all of that information. We can see that that's now come through to me. And if I head back here, if I wanted to send something really simple like a news article, I can come in, add a new news article. This is slightly more complicated with slightly more detail in here, but what do I want to send? I want to send some information about a film night. I want to add in a little picture. So I've got one there for film night. Just some overview information. My film night's being organised by the PTA. So let's send some information about it. We're going to automatically publish it on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and it's going to be taken down on Saturday after the event, and we'll save. We then, once it goes to the next screen, sorry, that's being incredibly slow. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Once it goes to the next screen, we decide who it's going to go to. There we go. So we preview our form. We then decide who it's going to go to. Let's say I'm going to send it to all parents. And actually, before we do that, I'm going to also send a notification. So all parents get an email and a push notification to make them aware that this is happening. I'm going to send that, and off it goes. So it's really easy to distribute any information you want really simply. And for more complex details, when we want to go into the forms and things like that, we've got further information on that on our Thursday webinar. So this is the Operoo system for parental engagement. One platform available on any device where parents can securely access, submit and update information with a series of clever tools to streamline the manual processing involved for the school in the back end. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left to get to your question. So I'm going to go back to our presentation and we'll click over to our next screen, which is our Q&A session. And I'm going to bring Lachlan back in here if I can.
Hey, Tom, nicely done. Excellent. I was going to share my screen, but you flipped across and done what I was going to do. Get us onto the Q&A. So we've had a few questions come through, as you have noted, Tom, and you've judged that quite well. So we've got 5 minutes just to go through a couple, which is nice. So I might just fire a few at you if you do not mind, Tom.
Yeah.
I think you half addressed this at the start of your demonstration, actually, but there is a question here that says, if parents don't sign up to the Operoo app, will they get emails straight to their email addresses? I mean, the short answer to that is yes. They don't have to download the app for them, their smartphone, but we highly recommend they do. Anything else you want to add there, Tom?
Yeah, I think the thing is, given the wide variety of different schools we have using Operoo, and schools within the same city can have huge different demographics. Operoo's designed, and we've seen the evidence that it's really flexible for different communities. So however your community wants to access the system, there is a way of them being able to do that. But it is designed to to be that flexible. Whatever your parents need, there is a route for them to access the information you want to provide.
Yep, absolutely. There's a question from Azad here. We might follow up with you individually just to make sure that I've interpreted your question correctly, but I will have a crack at it anyway because we have a couple of minutes. And you've said, how do you collect information from feeder schools? And so, I mean, I know in the UK, really, it's obviously about individual families wanting to, submit a pre-admissions application to, their school of choice. So if we're talking about like a secondary school, because we're talking about feeder schools that might be primary schools in the area, obviously the system is set up so that you put any of those pre-admitted families into a specific pre-admissions bucket, and then we can sync all that information across. And the idea is obviously to sort of try and go to your question, it hopefully eliminates the need to actually go around to all your feeder schools and actually drop off packets for the individual students and those sorts of things. So hopefully it really gets rid of that and then streamlines everything for the individual applicants, if that makes sense, and makes it all digital. But we can get back to you with some specific details to see if I've answered your question, Tom. Anything you want to add in there?
Yeah, just one thing I kind of would add in there is that we do have the example I'll use is for some of our sixth forms, because it's something which we see a lot, is that if you're a school with internal candidates and you have some external candidates for your sixth form, for example, you might want to collect something as simple as a reference from a feeder school. What a lot of our schools will do is they will use some of our triggers to be able to automate that. So they will have a form which they'll have a form where the person filling it in gives the name of a reference, and they give a reference email address. Now, based on that whoever they've submitted in there gets an email sent to them with a link to an Operoo public form, which is a form anybody can fill in, asking for a reference for that particular student. So there's some kind of clever ways around that about collecting information based on who's given that to you. But yeah, I think there are some specific examples, but we'll follow up with you directly on exactly how you can do that. And we've also seen with some of our schools that where they know where the feeder schools are, they are using different things to be able to collect certain bits of information in there. But we'll go through some specific options. We'll follow up with you directly on that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, there's sort of two questions which are basically asking the same thing in different words. So I'm going to go to that one next. So are there templates or forms set up already in the system, or do staff have to create them all? So the answer is we have a heap of commonly used form templates already set up to go in the system, because we know that that's a much easier way to get started. But to add to that, you can, of course, customize any of those forms, sort of clone them and go and create your version of them however you like, and you can build whatever you like in terms of, requests, acknowledgements, consent forms, any type of form that you need that might have a, signature request or payment request or anything. You can create what you need from scratch as well. So plenty of flexibility there to get as, I guess, customized as you like, but plenty out of the box to get you going pretty quick as well. Let me see. Can a school add action plans? Yes, they certainly can. So I think Tom touched on that a little bit during the demonstration, and I know I mentioned sort of student medical and health data as one sort of parent-facing workflow, but we do have a whole sort of health workflows webinar on next week that I encourage you to get along to if you're interested in that. But the short answer is yes, when you're collecting and getting students or the students' parents to verify emergency and medical information, one of the things you can get them to do, yes, is attach action plans that go along with that as well. And of course, you could stipulate a type of a type of action plan in a particular format as well, if that's what you need to do as well. So heaps of options there. And then, so a few questions about that. Oh, look, I will just say at this point, and there's only one more question after this, because I'm aware we're 1 minute past the hour. There are a couple of questions around hopefully it's given you some good ideas irrespective of which types of technologies you use, but there are a few new faces on here who've asked about pricing to do with Operoo. So if you are interested in hearing more from us about how we might be able to help automate some of these, some of these processes at your school, you'd like to know what that cost might be, just type in price or quote or something like that into the question box, and we'll be able to get back to you easily on that. As well, but we will follow up with everyone with the recording of this session and the slides irrespective as well. So other than getting that out of the way, because there were a few questions about that, there is a question here, Tom, let me see, can you choose which information is changed in SIMS, so the SIMS is a student, is a management information system, once a form has been submitted. So we might have to get back to you on that one, Hannah, depending on exactly what the scenario you're talking about there. But I would just mention that we do have a two-way integration with SIMS, and so that's a read and write back functionality. So I mean, depending on what you're looking to do, the answer would be yes, you can. But if you're submitting something and you're trying to change it after the fact, but a process depends on the original information submitted, you might want to be careful about how and when you go ahead and do that. So we might get back to you on the specific scenario that you're talking about there. Anything else you want to add there, Tom?
No, I think, yeah, that sounds quite specific. So I think we'll follow up directly with that one.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, excellent. Well, look, I think that does bring us to the end of the Q&A. So thank you for the questions, everybody. And Tom, if you just want to flip across to the next slide. So just a very quick reminder, because plenty of you are still on the call. As I said, this is a series that we're running over the next fortnight. So this is the first in that series. And so this has been the Parent Workflows webinar. But tomorrow at the same time, these are all at 12 p.m. BST to keep it really easy. So tomorrow, we've got the Staff Workflows webinar. On Thursday of this week, we've got the eForms Masterclass. And then next week on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, again, we've got that Health Workflows webinar. We've got one dedicated to managing paperless school trips, and then the last one is all about student and public facing workflows. So being able to actually request and send and share information with students, and then also, as Tom alluded to before, even outside your four walls, so people who aren't actually registered members of your school community, because there are occasions where you might want to survey people or let them participate in events like school productions, all that sort of good stuff that's hopefully coming back now that we're all getting fully vaccinated. So lots of good stuff coming up. Tom, if you want to flip across to the next one. There are also some webinars that we've run. If you go to the blog tab on our website, you can see there's all the webinars and videos tab. There's a bunch of recordings there, or you can find those recordings in our blog as well. But there are a bunch of webinars we've held over the last 12 months, and some of which you can see here that are dedicated to pre-admissions. There was a full webinar we did with Allerton, who we mentioned a couple of times in this session. There's one that we've also done with Bishopsgate, which is all around staff processes. Again, we referenced them a couple of times as well. And there is actually a Managing Paperless School Trips webinar that we held 4 or so months ago now, which will be similar to one of the sessions we're going to show next week, but some really good recordings there as well. And finally, as I mentioned before, everyone on this call is going to get a recording, so you don't need to worry about that. We are going to follow up with a copy of the presentations slides, and also that that guide that I talked about, which has the top 35 operational processes to automate for UK schools this year. So that's going to be something that everyone will receive as well. And as I said, we'll reach out to you with that content, so you've got it all at your fingertips. But if there is something you'd like from us and you want to know how we can help your school, you can reach out to us in the meantime as well. Through our website, so operoo.com/contact sales. But with that, I know we're 5 minutes past the hour now. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I hope it was a really informative session, and we're hopefully going to see you on the other sessions throughout the next couple of weeks. But thanks again for your time, and bye for now.